Hello and welcome to Arts and Entertainment.
With Chris and Randall.
I'm Chris.
I'm Randall.
And welcome to our show. This is going to be a new thing we're going to do every so often, where instead of doing a full episode, we're just going to do a brief little nugget, each from our own point of view. Today, we're going to be covering in our two-parter our little cultural obsessions with arts and entertainment. These are things that are just unique to either Chris or to Randall, to myself or to Randall. That sounds so weak. Never talk about yourself in the third person. It makes you sound like a weirdo, right, Randall?
Well, you can get away with it, Chris.
You're beyond.
You have the presence. You have the presence.
Thank you so much. And before we get too deep into the show, as always, I like to ask people, if you're new to the show, please like and subscribe, share and comment. And Randall, where are the best places to comment?
Probably the best places. Go to our Facebook page. There's some comments there. People like to go there and tell us about our show. And go to our website. You can find other places. You can send us an email.
Yes, in fact, it's really funny you should say that. My friend Virginia Mickelson just this morning asked me for where our website is, and I won't lie, folks. It's a lot to type in. You have to type in Arts ampersand Entertainment with Chris ampersand.
Actually,
Randall.
Chris, it's just chrisandrandall.com.
Oh, that's all you have to type in?
That's it, yeah.
Oh, well then what do I know? Well, it shows you
With
how...
no ampersand.
No ampersand.
Ampersand. It's just the
folks,
word and.
So if I just want to get there, shows you how often I go, I would just type in CHRISANDRANDALL.com.
That's right.
Wow. You can tell I'm dyslexic because I had to actually struggle with the last couple of vowels. What were we talking about? Oh, so Randall, your little obsession comes from the world of humor. Why don't you share it with us?
Okay, so, I watched a lot of TV growing up, and I kept hearing this joke on a lot of TV shows, like sitcoms. Old vaudeville performers used to do it, I think. I'm pretty sure it was on every old sitcom at least once somewhere. Maybe I heard it on Bewitched at some point. I wish I could think of an example of like when it was actually used on a TV show, but I can't. I just remember hearing it as a kid on TV shows. Maybe the Flintstones used it once.
What is this joke?
Okay, Chris, ask me what should I call you, as if we're just meeting for the first time.
What should I call you?
You can call me whatever you like. Just don't call me late for dinner.
That is an interesting joke.
Well, I guess I wanted to do a show on this joke because it doesn't make any sense to me, and I guess I wanted to look into it and see what is the deal with this joke, because it doesn't make any sense. Chris, have you heard this joke before? Now you were telling me you haven't.
I thought it. I hate to say this. It's so weird. It's one of those things where you think you've heard it before. You're pretty sure you heard it before, and you have absolutely no idea if you actually ever heard it before. It almost sounds like something I should have heard, but I got it blanked out. That's not a comment on the amazing... Actually, it is. It's a comment on the joke. Because it's like, clearly, if I did hear that joke, it did not register. Do you remember the first time you heard that joke?
No, I do not. Although I think... I must have heard it as a very tiny kid, and I think I even remember asking my mother about it, and I don't think she could explain it to me. I must have heard it off of TV. I mean, I watched a lot of TV, like I said. The intention of the joke is obvious somehow, even though I'm going to get into why the joke doesn't make any sense. But the intention of the intended meaning of the joke is pretty obvious. It means the speaker or the respondent who says, "Don't call me late for dinner," is saying that they intend to say that they don't care what you call them. They don't care.
That would be the punchline. That would be the punchline, right? So the setup is, let's break it down like a joke. The setup is, Well, how did the first part of that joke go again?
What should I call you?
What should I call you? And now the expectation on any joke is always the normal thing, right? Like, what should you call me? Call me Frank. Call me John. Call me Chris. Call me Randall. So the surprise is the punchline, and the punchline is, say that again.
It says, "Call me anything, but don't call me late for dinner."
Don't call me late for dinner. Did not. And do you think that part of the reason why that joke's so funny is it's a surprise?
Well, I don't think it's funny. That's the problem. I
Okay.
don't think it's funny. I don't think it ever was funny. I mean, it could go into a category of dad jokes and pun jokes that people never like, but people keep using. If you go on the internet and you Google like "don't call me late for dinner," you'll see that there's evidence the joke's been used for 100 years. The first time it was used was probably 1830. Um, it just okay. So even though it doesn't make any sense, I'll get into it. Even though it doesn't make any sense, we know what the speaker intends, right? That they're not formal. They don't care what you call them. All they care about is eating food, I guess, right? um, um, but doesn't make any sense. You know, when I was a kid, when I first heard it, I think I thought that the joke had something to do with telephones. But see, the joke predates telephones. Okay, so
Well, to call someone for dinner, it was back in the day when people actually would, have dinner bells, and dining was a formal occasion. So, I mean, yes, it's true if you live in it, it's more of an aristocratic event. Imagine living in a mansion so big that you are far from the dining room, and therefore to be called for dinner is part of the affair.
you know what, Chris? That is a great explanation. And at some point in my relationship with this joke, I had that same opinion. I thought, yeah, this must be a situation. The joke must come out of a situation where there's a bunch of people in a big mansion and servants have to go and call people down for dinner.
Yes.
And you don't want your servant to come in and call you late for dinner.
Because then you might miss a
You'll
course.
miss some meal. You'll miss some food, right? But I don't know. It doesn't seem. I mean, but why would the servant be late? Is it because the servant is dawdling? Is it because the servant forgot to get you? And why don't they use like a dinner bell? I mean, isn't that and if you are in a giant aristocratic mansion, don't you have set meal times?
Well, I mean, and maybe that is why the joke is so interesting to you, because there's I mean, no, you're right. It's an interesting point. We never really think about how humor only works with context. Like if you don't have a shared cultural context with a joke, then the joke doesn't ever really make sense. Like, what's the most common joke people tell children? I'll give you an example. What time is it? Well, here's one that everyone knows, right? Why did the boy throw his clock out the window?
Why?
He wanted to see time fly. So, I mean, that joke works as long as everyone knows the punchline. Time flies. It's a metaphor. It's not real. It's just a saying that, oh, time flies while you're having fun. The other part of that joke is that you all have to have a clock. And it's weird to say this, but in this period of history, I wonder how many people even have clocks anymore.
Well, clocks are still around. Yeah, I mean that joke is. I feel like that joke's a wordplay joke. You know, I'll admit. I think it took me a while as a kid to understand that joke too. Because it has a couple of different meanings that are all smushed together, right? So it's got the expression "time flies," which we know what that means as adults, right? But a child has a problem with that phrase, I would think.
Yeah.
And then the literal kind of joke meaning of the clock flying through the air. And then you have to accept that the clock is a representation of time itself. It's symbolic of time, and it's flying. And so that joke so there's three different layers of meaning that have to be smushed together in that joke. Now the problem with the "don't call me late for dinner" joke. Okay, so I already got through the mansion part, but um, there's another way to look at the joke, perhaps. That I did a lot of research on this joke, Chris, and nobody on the internet
How
seems
long have you been researching this joke? I'm just really curious.
well for this show. I mean, I
No, but like it sounds like this is a joke that you've been living with for a
it's a
couple
joke.
of
I've
years.
been living with this joke since I was a little tiny kid. This is one of the first
Wow.
jokes that I've heard,
And your
and I had
level
never
of
understood it.
inquiry has never abated.
No, because well, for a while, the explanation you gave about the servants and the big mansion, for a while that satisfied me, and I forgot about the joke. I forgot about the irritation of this joke. Okay, because that was a satisfying explanation for me for a while, and I think I came up with that explanation because I watched some movie about rich people living in a house, and they got called to dinner literally, which in my experience as a child, there was never any calling to dinner.
Your
Okay,
butler never
my
called your dinner as a small boy.
I never had any servants growing up, Chris.
Cook
No.
was not calling you into the main dining hall because you didn't want to miss the buffet, the fish dish.
No,
Did you come
no.
in late and only had the entree?
All right, well, I'll tell you about my
Did you wear
childhood.
your evening jacket? You know.
No, was that your experience, Chris?
Oh, of course. That's
Okay.
most people's. It's most civilized people's experience. I'm from New York, so of course we'd have dinner at 8. We'd have the cocktail hour first around 4 to 6, and
Well, see, you had set times.
well, it's at times, but even by certainly by sunset or at least 6 o'clock, one was expected to be in their evening attire.
All right, well, I don't know if you're joking or not, but
What's sad is I'm not entirely joking. So
Chris grew up in Manhattan. If the audience doesn't know,
half this
Swank.
joke is not even a joke, which I guess makes for a whole other kind of joke. But let's get back to you, Randall. And
Well,
why
I'll tell
you're
you my dinner time experience as a kid was
yes.
my mother just threw me a plate of food while I was sitting on the couch. That was pretty much my experience of dinner,
and were
and I
you
was watching
ever
TV.
called late to dinner by your mom while she was slinging
No,
food across the
No,
couch?
no, because as soon as the food was ready, she just handed it to me and I ate it. That was it. And we rarely ate at a dinner table. I mean, today I cook. I like to cook, and I do call my girlfriend to the table to eat. But I don't know why I'd call her late. Why would I? See, here's another problem with the joke. Why would I sit down at the table and start eating and then think, oh, I should call my girlfriend to dinner? So now I've called her late to dinner, but why would I do that, Chris? I don't understand why I would do that. I mean, is it because there is some degree of maliciousness on the person serving dinner? They're trying to get more of their share of food. Is that part of the joke? I mean, possibly.
Well, I mean, I guess the humor, and this is a great thing about telling a joke, right? Is that in the list of priorities, the person is saying, I don't really care if you get my name right. What I care about is that I eat.
Right. Okay.
And if you're delivering the joke, right? If we were writing this as a sketch or a film, one person could give the flippant answer, like, well, just don't call me late for dinner. But another person said, you can call me what you like, just don't call me late for dinner. And as long as that person delivering that joke stresses how important not being called late for dinner is to them, the joke becomes even funnier. Because I guess in a weird way, and I think this is kind of the appeal of that joke, is it does tell you there's a difference between the formalities, the things that we absolutely would like and the things we absolutely require. And that joke really shows the difference between preference and requirement. I prefer that you call me Chris. I require that you give me food. And strangely enough, there's that old big believing in truth in comedy, right? That the funniest jokes have some grounding in reality. And even an abstract joke like that, it's almost a challenge to find the reality in it, the truth, the hidden layer of truth. And the hidden layer of truth is, cosmetics aside, I can separate what I really need from what would just be okay.
Right. That's one of the more interesting things about the joke. The intended meaning of the joke completely comes across, and I think that's possibly why people have continued to use it for 100 years. um, you totally understand what the speaker's saying. They don't go in for formality, right? They just want to eat. They're just concerned with what's practical. So let me get into the last way of looking at this joke that I don't think a lot of people look at it this way, but this is another way to interpret it, is that the speaker, the respondent, is saying, they're not really saying, don't call me late to dinner. They're saying, you'll never call me late to dinner, because they are always there to eat. And, this makes the joke make a lot more sense to me, right? Because you're saying, you can call me whatever you want, but you'll never call me late for dinner. You understand what I'm saying, right, Chris?
Oh, yeah, that's true. Because there's not even a warning there. It's the saying, I'm consistent about my appetites. And
right. I don't care about anything except for eating.
You go back to even Greek and Roman satire, and in the basis of a lot of humor in both the gods and in comedic archetypes are the characters who are a slave to their appetite. There's, Bacchus, who's clearly a slave to drink, but there's also the glutton, who's clearly a slave to food. And being a slave to food is something that we all share as human beings. So the universality that deep down inside all of us have the capacity for gluttony, and maybe that's what keeps this joke moving through history. And again, I'm sure the language may change and may be adapted, but the basics of I want food and I want you to give me food will probably always be in fashion.
Right. And the only problem with that with that interpretation of the joke is that in all my research of the joke and all the ways I've ever heard it, no one's ever said it that way. I mean, but I mean, maybe it gets a little bit too tortured, the layers of meaning on the joke, it's already overly complicated. I feel like, as a joke. I mean, it's interesting that you bring up the time flies joke, because I think that it has a lot of in common with that joke. The time flies joke. Most jokes only have like one or two layers of meaning, right, stitched together, but this late for dinner joke, and especially the time flies joke, has too many layers of meaning. It becomes not funny. I think. But I don't know. I mean, I guess people keep using it, so it must. I mean, somebody must find it funny. Although I would love to hear.
I think it's the fact that it appeals to the universal nature of us as human beings, right? Because we're always going to be hungry, right? And we always are. It's look. A good joke can sometimes reveal the hypocrisy of human behavior, right? So on one hand, we intend that you say my name correctly. It's a desire. But the hypocrisy is we just don't really care. What we care about is that we're fed.
Yeah. I mean, well, that's the intended meaning of the joke. And I mean, I guess you're right. It totally comes across. And even though the joke, it doesn't really seem to make any sense, like from a literal point of view, it seems to make sense from an emotional point of view.
And that's maybe the best kind of joke, the joke that makes sense from an emotional point of view, because, you don't even have to think too hard on it.
Well, it's funny because, like, I've obviously thought too hard on it, but
apparently so.
But I don't think most jokes are like that. I think most jokes are fairly easy to. They're fairly literal. I mean, most jokes are fairly literal, which is why they're funny, right? It's like they're too literal, right?
So this joke is unique because this is, I guess, and this is a question I have for you. Do you think the reason why you've been obsessed with this joke for years is because riddles and jokes share a lot in common? There's a lot, a riddle and a joke both deal kind of with some sort of logical inconsistency. So do you think the reason why you've been obsessed with it is because there's something embedded in the joke structure, and jokes clearly are important to you. You're a humorist. You're just trying to resolve. You know what I'm saying? You can tell, like, you know what is a great joke, and you know what a terrible joke is, but this joke is neither terrible nor great, correct?
Uh, I don't know. I guess I go back and forth. I mean, you've almost convinced me it's not such a bad joke in this conversation.
I mean, I don't think it's a bad joke, but I'm really more fascinated about why, of all the jokes you've ever heard in your life, this is the one that is so, it's like an earworm that won't go away.
Well, I think for me, it's because I've just heard it so many times. Like growing up watching TV, I heard people on TV make this joke a lot. And, it's funny because I feel like people have stopped really making this joke. Although in my research for it, I see that some people are still making this joke, like on their blogs and things like that.
So it's kind of almost like FOMO, right? Like it's the fear of missing out.
Well, I don't want it. Well, that's true. I mean, that's another reason I don't like it when I don't understand a joke. It sticks with me. Um, if I guess I feel like, yeah, I'm missing out on the fun of the joke. I mean, I don't. It's just the joke doesn't make any sense to me, so I feel like I'm missing out on the fun of it. I mean, I do you. I don't, and I guess I'm also puzzled by why people keep using it if it doesn't make any sense. I mean, but I guess it does make sense in an emotional
No,
way.
there's nothing like, and I guess is really the only thing I can relate it to is I remember seeing Ghostbusters when I had a cold, and the whole audience was laughing and I wasn't, and it
Oh.
is very weird when the audience laughs and you don't, because you're it's such a basic human experience that you're trying to figure out. So maybe for you, it is this thing that other human people seem to have gotten at some point in history, and now no one gets it anymore. So it's even harder now because there's no one alive to explain to you why that's such a damn funny joke.
Well, people keep making it, so they must like it. I mean, I don't know. This joke could be on the same level as. Have you ever heard the expression "the bee's knees"?
Yes,
So, have you ever done any research on that expression?
not at all.
Okay, okay, get this, Chris. So, if you start researching it, nobody knows where it comes from. Apparently, people just started using it and saying it because it rhymes,
Hmm.
right? I mean,
Right.
because
Literate.
it sounds cool, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem to have any actual meaning.
Hmm. Well, that's a great place to kind of maybe put this to an end. If you're listening or you're watching and you understand that joke, not the bee's knees, or if you do understand, but just that joke about, that Randall's obsessed with, do you find it funny? Does this joke make sense to you? Do you want to diagram this joke for us? Do you want to help Randall out so that he isn't, spending the rest of his life? Because I take it the journey still isn't over with you in this joke.
Well, I am willing to engage in discussion about this joke with anybody. I want to know what people think. I mean, I I am a little obsessed with this
Well,
joke.
then,
It is one of the. I mean, it is one of the only jokes I feel like that I just don't get. And it doesn't make any sense to me. I just wish I knew.
here is where we leave you, Randall Mills, and hopefully somebody will come by and decipher the mystery, so you will not spend the rest of your waking years pondering over this particular just simple joke. All right, until then, I'll come back with our next part where I talk about my cultural obsession. Stay tuned. Until then, this is Chris.
This is Randall.
We'll talk later.
Bye.
Bye.